Tom McClintock, ladies and gentlemen, and Tom, I've been thinking about you all morning, and I have come to this conclusion, that this may be you sitting in the committee that will go down in the history of this country as the greatest turning point of ever. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's what the American founders feared. They feared that the impeachment process might be used someday, not for what was specified in it, bribery, treason, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, but rather to be used as a weapon of partisan vengeance. The Democrats have been trying to impeach this president since a few days after the election. This was 2.5 months before he was sworn in. They began calling for his impeachment. The day after the 2018 election made Jerry Nadler the chairman of Judiciary. He was overheard on the train heading back to Washington plotting out the impeachment. They for 2 years pursued this monstrous lie, this Russian collusion hoax. That fell apart the moment it hit public scrutiny with the Mueller report. They then cast around. In fact, it was the day after the Mueller report that the president had this conversation. They've now seized upon as a pretext, is the latest pretext for impeachment. And the witnesses they had yesterday were left-wing law professors who've been calling for his impeachment on for things as petty as a tweet back in March of 2017. I mean, so we spent 8.5 hours yesterday simply affirming that left-wing college professors don't like Donald Trump. Wow.
Yeah, no, we watched enough of that yesterday to get a real sense of it. I was impressed with Jonathan Turley's speech, however, and granted, He is on the other side of this fence, but he seemed to be...
He was the Republican witness who, by the way, doesn't like Donald Trump either. Didn't vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
But he thinks that this is a complete abomination, and it is. I mean, again, this was debated at length in the Constitutional Convention. And there was a faction in the convention who adopted the Democrats' position, that is that they could impeach for any reason. Mm-hmm. And the majority of the convention, led by James Madison, said, no, wait a second, if that's the case, then we no longer have a separation of powers that we're trying to design into this Constitution. Instead, we pretty much have a British system where the president simply sits at the pleasure of the Senate. That's not what we're planning here. This is what we're trying to get away from.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting lesson in history. Now, the newest move, Nancy Pelosi, a few moments ago, came out and is now getting top headlines on all media that she now is going to specifically ask that the Judiciary Committee go forward with the articles of impeachment. That almost turns her into wanting to be the queen of the country here. It sure appears as though she wants to now grab the headlines.
It's just completely disingenuous. Since for 3 years they've been calling for the president's impeachment. Suddenly we have this announcement that she's reluctantly come to this conclusion. Oh my God, they were calling for this sort of not her in particular, but the vast majority of the Democrats were calling for this years ago.
Well, with this announcement, it sort of now says that she wants to own this thing. So obviously she must feel like they're going to win this thing.
Well, here's their problem. They can suppress witnesses in the House, and they have. In a free society, the prosecution doesn't get to choose what witnesses the defense calls, but that's exactly what Adam Schiff has been doing, and we expect that's going to continue under Jerry Nadler. But once it goes over to the Senate is going to insist on a full airing of all of these issues, and central to this issue is Joe Biden's conduct, which is was the crux of the president's concerns over corruption between Ukrainian and American officials. The American official he's concerned about was Joe Biden, who used $1 billion of federal loan guarantees to force the firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor general, who the prosecutor general says at the time he was ramping up an investigation against this corrupt business, Burisma, and the millions of dollars it had paid to Hunter Biden. Now, all of that's going to come out, I think. I would like to see Victor Shokin give testimony. I'd like to see Hunter Biden called in. I'd like to see the financial records. Where did the millions of dollars Burisma paid Hunter Biden go? There's going to be a lot of this unfolding now, and I think that it's going to blow up the Democrats' faces.
Well, that's what everybody I'm talking to about it. And the other thing I'm hearing too, Tom, I'm hearing it a lot now, is everybody is totally fed up with this thing. I mean, they're turning it off. They're talking about it, but not like they were 2 weeks ago. Now they're not concerned and interested in whether or not the president's going to be impeached. They're talking about why can't this all stop and get the government back to work again. That's a turning point here, I think.
Kevin McCarthy a few weeks ago pointed out that the House Democrats have issued more subpoenas than they have passed bills that have been signed into law. And that ought to give you some measure of the target fixation that the Democrats have on impeachment. Target fixation, by the way, is a term the Air Force uses to describe a situation where a pilot gets so fixated on a target he forgets to fly his plane and ends up crashing into a mountain. That's what the Democrats are doing with the country right now.
Well, I would hope you're going to write a book, Tom, when you get time, because I think you're sitting in the center of one of the most interesting periods of this country. So,
it's a dangerous period because if the left is able to seize control of our justice system, think about the doctrines that they've introduced in this impeachment. Prosecution gets to choose what witnesses the defense can call. Any person who invokes their legal rights. That's under the Democrats' new definition. That's deemed obstruction of justice and evidence of guilt. This notion that the president's responsibility is to prove his innocence turns the entire presumption of innocence on its head. These are all legal doctrines that the Democrats have used to pursue this, and they're frightening.
Well, I also heard that there is some discussion on how they want to approach and change the Constitution on this whole impeachment thing to make it easier. Now, that would take a tremendous amount of time and effort, and all the states would have to agree to it. But it's amazing how they keep talking about it. Well,
people need to pay attention to this because it is a very serious threat to the very fundamental principles that protect our freedom as Americans.
Well, Tom, I'd ask you if there's what else is going on, but it doesn't seem like you have a whole lot of time on your hands.
Well, more importantly, what else is not going on with the USMCA, the big trade agreement, which literally means hundreds of thousands of American jobs, billions of dollars of economic expansion. All of that's been sitting on the back burner while the Democrats are fixated on impeachment. You look at the list of what Peter Navarro calls opportunity costs, all of the things that ought to be done and aren't getting done because the Congress is fixated on impeachment. It's a sobering cost that we're all paying for this.
So, in effect, the government is at a standstill.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, as usual, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we will see you again next week. But then there will be some more time off pretty soon. Gosh, we're looking at Christmas.
Oh no, we've got. Well, our schedule's now been extended pretty much to Christmas Eve.
Okay. So,
again, not to do anything productive, but to focus on impeachment.
Well, thanks for your time, and appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks.
Right, thanks so much. Tom McClintock, ladies and gentlemen, from Washington, D.C. He is our Congressman, Area 4, here in Placer County, and covers an interesting area of conservatism in California. There is not much of that, but he, being a Republican, represents that group.